Hey, Professor W, what is the population of North Korea and how does it compare to that of South Korea?
Excellent question. Well, you see, the population of North Korea is about 25 million, while the population in South Korea is almost double that, at about 49 million.
Professor, can you compare the fertility rates between North and South Korea?
Well, North Korea's fertility rate is actually higher than South Korea's. Being a developing country, this shouldn't come as a surprise. North Korea's fertility rate is about 2, which is around what the UN would classify the replacement level, while South Korea's is a bit lower at about 1.3 children per woman.
Professor, what are the crude birth and crude death rates for North and South Korea?
Well, North Korea's crude birth rates and crude death rates have been fluctuating a bit recently as they're a developing country. So their crude birth rate has been on the decline. It was about 20 in the year 2000, but now it's closer to around 14 or 15. And the crude death rate in North Korea has increased. It was about 6 or 7 in the year 2000, and it's risen to about 9. In South Korea, the crude birth and death rates have stayed relatively stable. The crude death rate in South Korea is right now at about 7, and it's projected to go down, while the crude birth rate in South Korea is about 8.
Hey, Professor W, I had a quick question. What is the arable land for North and South Korea?
Great question. South Korea's arable land is estimated about 15.3% and uses 2.2% of its land for permanent crops, which are crops that are not replanted after every harvest, such as citrus, coffee, and rubber. North Korea has an arable land percentage of 19.5% and uses 1.9% of its land for permanent crops. Based on the data, North Korea is more dependent on agriculture and harvesting food to support its economy because of its larger percentage of arable land.
Alright, Professor, but what about the differences between arithmetic density in North Korea and arithmetic density in South Korea?
As far as arithmetic density, North Korea is much less dense at about 208 people per square kilometer, meaning their population is much spread out much more thinly as a result of having much more farm area space. Whereas South Korea has about 517 people per square kilometer. This is largely due to the fact that they are much more urbanized and have a larger population living and working in cities. Professor, what is the per capita income of South Korea?
The income of South Korea is approximately $27,090, while the income of North Korea is approximately $24,565.
Professor, can you tell us what the GDP of South Korea is?
The average GDP of South Korea is approximately $1.4 trillion, whereas North Korea is approximately $12.38 billion.
Hey, Professor W, what are the average employment and unemployment rates for both countries?
The unemployment rate of South Korea is 3.47% and 4.1% for North Korea. Both countries have employment rates of 95.1%. South Korea has a tertiary school completion rate of 40%, while North Korea has only 12%.
Hey, Professor W, quick question. What are the labor force participation rates for both countries?
Labor force participation in South Korea is 61.8% and 78% in North Korea. Professor, how much do both countries spend on military expenditures?
In North Korea, they spend a total of about 28.4% of their total GDP, while in South Korea, they only use about 2.6% of their GDP.
Professor W, how many are incarcerated in North and South Korea?
North Korea is perhaps has one of the highest incarceration rates. It suggests around 600 to 800 per 100,000 in population. So roughly around 200,000 people are incarcerated each year. In South Korea, in the year 2014, 50,800 were in population in prison. For the rates in 2014, it was about 101 out of 100,000 per year.
Hey Professor,
what does North Korea's population pyramid look like?
That's a good question. Over here we have North Korea's population pyramid. We have the young dependents in this group right here. So this is the young people dependent on the working class. And then up here we have our elderly dependents right here. So as you see, North Korea has a lot of dependents. And right here, as you see, the working class kind of right here kind of drops off a little bit. But yeah, so North Korea has a bit of a problem with too many dependents and not enough working class. But roughly the shape of North Korea's population pyramid, you could get away with.
Professor, can you describe the population pyramid for South Korea?
You know, Taylor, that's a great question. I was just looking at the pyramid, and I see that the young dependents right here, we have the young, then branching out from, looks like 55 and above. This is, mind you, this is a rough sketch, but we have a high amount of elderly dependents, and this is going to put a lot of stress on the working class. And from what I can tell you is they have a strong working class, it looks like. What they're lacking is they need more children. They need more children to support the working class, and these people, this population who's eventually going to end up right here. They need to start evening out the population by having more babies. Also, it's safe to say that you can kind of give South Korea a beehive. Rough estimate.